Everyone dreams of owning a JDM legend like the Nissan Skyline R34. But here's the problem. When that car finally arrives in the US, most buyers have no idea what's hiding under the hood. That's why today I'm excited to team up with my buddy Roger Barrera from QVO Tactical. Roger just imported this Skyline R34 from Japan, and he's documenting the entire process on his YouTube channel, so make sure you check him out. We're gonna give this car a full inspection right here in my shop and find out if this JDM icon really lives up to the hype, or if it's hiding secrets that could cost him thousands. Stick around, because I'm gonna show you exactly what every buyer should know before pulling the trigger on a JDM import.
Yeah, hopping in this from the Porsche where it's the other way, I'm like, ah.
You got the manual on yours too?
Yeah. It's got a 997.1 C4S.
Nice.
Yeah, the clutch is long in this.
I think you need.
Nope, that's 6 or 5.
Oh, okay.
It's still the same shifting pattern, yeah.
Okay.
And then the other thing will get you is the turn signal. It's on the right.
Okay.
So there's every time you'll see.
Put the wiper on, everybody knows you're going.
Yep. It's funny though, and on patrol, it's like when you see somebody hitting the windshield wipers at night, it's like a telltale sign they're drunk. Or like my other problem with this is I find myself moving too far left because I'm like used to kind of being left center.
It's totally awkward, yeah.
There
you go. even with the warning, I failed.
Like for me, man, the sound's pretty much almost already there. Like all the sounds I want out of this thing.
Sounds good.
I just want that.
Definitely got some brake vibration, no doubt about that.
Would that be warped rotors?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
So Roger, how long did it take you to figure out how to drive this?
Honestly, about, I don't know, like 30 minutes. Like, it's nice because the shift pattern's the same. If the shift pattern was different, then it would have been probably more pain. And like the pedals are the same too.
That helps, yeah.
So just the turn signal and being on the other side. And then same thing, like not being all like. Thanks. The amount
You
of
get that
people
everywhere you go, don't
everywhere
you?
with this car, dude. You pull into a gas station, one kid's like, "Can I make a video?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Can I tag you?" "No." "Sorry." Yellow's charging.
All right, no big deal. We'll just go ahead and test it. See if it's a flooded battery, and I can take a guess based on this group size that it's probably only about 450 cold cranking amps. Let's see.
440 to 600?
Yeah, that's what I figured. I was going to put it at 450. So I've got it set for 450 right now, so that'll work out good.
So what does that mean?
So the cold cranking amperage is basically the capacity of the battery, like how big is it, right?
Okay.
So a battery this size is usually somewhere in that range, about 450 cold cranking amps. We don't need a ton to start this engine. It's not huge, right? If you had a big truck, you might need something that has 800 cold cranking amp capacity, right? Okay, so the battery's testing good. Its capacity is actually 583 cold cranking amps. And then the battery voltage is 12.76 volts. So a fully charged battery is 12.6 volts.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually even a little bit higher than it is. That's why it has a surface charge on it right now. Probably the alternator is doing a great job of charging, and it's maybe just a tad overcharged.
Gotcha.
But we can test the alternator too and see. Yeah, no, you don't want. You should be scared. That's a good sign. If you're feeling confident about putting your hand in there, it's probably something wrong. So it just gave us the cranking voltage, is about 10.5 volts, which is good. We don't want the cranking voltage to drop too low. It means capacity is not good on it. Now it's going to check the charging voltage. So we're at 14 volts, which is normal. Usually about 13.5, 14.5 volts is where we want to be. It's right in the middle. That's perfect. And then it asks us to put the loads back on. Wants to see how the alternator does with the electrical loads on, the compressor, the lights, all those types of things. It's detecting, looking for what they call a ripple on there, and that's alternating current coming out of the alternator. The alternators should produce alternating current, but then it rectifies it to direct current. That's how we charge a DC battery, right? So it's just looking to see if there's a rectifier bridge inside the alternator. It may be bad. It'll usually test anything over about 0.5 volt. Usually means we've got some leakage somewhere.
So like what's something typically wrong with a car that would cause that ripple?
Bad alternator.
Okay.
All right, so that's it. That's all we need to check on here. So our charging system is good, starting system is good. So that test where we cranked it and measured the voltage cranking, usually tells us if there's a problem maybe in the starter or something. It's drawing too much voltage, right? It's dropping the voltage too low, too much current maybe, okay? So a couple of the fluids we can look at are like the brake fluid here. I don't know what they've got in here. It should be .3 unless they converted it. It's supposed to have .3 in it, but it looks a little bit green to me. So unless you see the color of it. Mm-hmm. So brake fluid should be a clear color. I can show you.
Says it's
contamination or moisture in the system. So that's why I'm saying it shouldn't be green. And what I want to do is I'm going to take one that hasn't been opened yet, and I just want to show you what it's supposed to look like so you have an idea. You see how clear it is? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's what brake fluid should look like. And it should always be from a sealed container because brake fluid is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture. That's its job. Right? Okay. But what happens is when the moisture content gets too high, usually over about 2.5–3%, you have a potential to actually boil the brake fluid in there. So we get a lot of heat generated in the brake calipers. So all that heat can boil the fluid, and then once we get the boiled fluid, we can no longer stop, right? We don't have the hydraulic force that we need in there. We need pure liquid in there. You can't compress a liquid. So that's good for the brakes. Once we get a little air in there, we have spongy brake pedal, and then you get what they call brake fade. You know, when you get the brakes really hot and you start to boil the fluid and the brake pedal just goes to the floor. And that's when it gets kind of dangerous.
But that chatters definitely the rotors.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, I could say definitely the rotors, and it may be a combination of the rotors and the wheels and the spacers also exaggerating that.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it's really bad. Like when
it feels the same from when the stock wheels that came with it.
It does? Okay. All right.
So the spacer on here is only 5mm, and that was just to clear this caliper.
And it's not so much the distance of the spacer even. Sometimes the offset does weird things by moving the weight out, right? So if you had a wheel that was out of balance, it might just be exaggerated a little bit. But on this one here, I think it's probably just the brake rotors themselves are giving you the majority of the vibration.
I immediately noticed, I was like,
yeah. So a brake fluid flush would be in order, and you would do that anyway if you're going to do brakes, right? So especially in a car like this where you just got it and it's an old car, you want to go through and flush all the fluids anyway, probably. I mean, the oil looks good. We'll go ahead and get up underneath and look at the transmission fluid. Coolant's going to be a little hot at the moment. We can take a look at the reservoir here, just kind of see. It looks like it's full, and it looks like a good color. Let me grab a light. Yeah, so it looks pretty good. And then it should be in between those marks. You see the full and then the low? Mm-hmm. Okay, so about 2/3 of the way up there. So plenty.
If you shine here, I can see it.
You can see it better in there? Yeah. Yeah, so it looks pretty good. And of course, looks is not the only thing, but if it's dirty, then you should definitely do something with it.
Sure.
If it's clean, well, hopefully the freeze protection is good. The mixture of coolant to water, the ratio hopefully is good. So we can test that with another tool. We've already got one here we could probably do that with, but it's just kind of irrelevant if you're keeping the car here. If you're going somewhere north where it's going to be cold and get below freezing, then we may have an issue, right? Gotcha. So if you decide you want to do that, we can go ahead.
Issue here.
What's that?
Definitely not an issue here.
Not here, yeah. So we got some power steering fluid in here. This has got a little dipstick on it, you see it? So it says cold and hot, and we're not showing anything on the stick at all, okay? So probably a little bit low. I can't really even get my finger in there. Yep, looks a little bit low. You see, I can see there's like a screen filter in there.
Mm-hmm.
It should be up above that. You can see the level.
Yep. I see what you're talking about.
We can add a little steering fluid and check it for a leak once we get it up in the air. It might be a leak in the power steering pump, hoses, or the steering gear rack itself. Just go ahead and put a little bit in here.
I'm actually impressed with the remount job they did here.
Yeah, looks good. A little plastic weld.
Yeah.
All right, we'll check the air filter. This is the one everybody usually does on their own, right?
A little bit of a...
It's easier to do this. All right, so this one looks pretty dirty. So, oh yeah, see, it's falling apart already. So normally what you want to do is you want to open these pleats up, but this thing is so old and decrepit. It's like, this is actually looks like an original Nissan filter. I wouldn't be surprised, yeah. They usually, the original Nissan ones always came with this metal housing on them, and then all the aftermarket ones don't usually have that on there. So
Gotcha.
This thing has got some age on it. I might have something we can stuff in there. I'll take a look and see if we can find. It looks like a standard style Nissan filter.
Okay. Yeah, that orange, I thought I was scanning it first.
All right, we're missing a clip for later. All right. So
I could not figure out, like, why are they not turning on?
So that belt feels tight. And that one actually feels pretty tight too, yeah. So you might.
I just laugh. I always see people doing the chapstick thing.
And maybe this AC belt is the one giving you fits. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's only on cold start that I hear the, I don't know, it's like the whining noise of the belt.
Is it a screeching or a whining?
Screeching, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because these feel pretty tight. These two, I wouldn't want to tighten them. The alternator, the air conditioning compressor is all the way down at the bottom down here. That's this pulley. And we could probably tighten that belt up just a hair and see if your noise goes away. The belts don't look dry rotted or anything, but it doesn't mean that they're not functioning 100%.
Sure.
The rubber's probably old on them, okay? Probably wouldn't be a bad idea at some point, change the oil. Like I said, go through and do some of the fluids on just to get it up to speed. We don't know when they've been done. There's no way to tell that, right? So here's your hydraulic fluid for your clutch.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you can see the color difference on this one compared to the brake fluid,
Uh-huh.
right? They're the same fluid,
Ah, okay.
right?
It's like a dark brown.
Yeah, exactly. And this is just starting to get a little bit dirty. It's not that bad. It'll start clear. It'll go to yellow. It'll go to light brown, dark brown, eventually black. Okay?
Gotcha.
But same type of fluid. You put brake fluid in both of them.
Gotcha.
As a matter of fact, this might actually say on here .3. We can take a look.
Use only brake fluid?
From a sealed container, so they don't tell you what dot level to do, but .3 is the common one. Yeah, that one has it for sure. So. But again, it's another thing, you could just bleed and flush the clutch fluid on it as well. Get some new fluid in the system, right? It's not imperative, it's working, everything's fine, just maintenance standpoint, okay?
Oh, I like what you're, like we do everything that we should that way a year.
Take care of the maintenance, yeah.
Like, hey, it's fresh from this date.
So another thing you might want to consider, now this is kind of a pain in this car because of this intake plan, the way it wraps over the top of their spark plugs down the middle. Wouldn't be a bad idea to pull some out. If you're going to pull them out, probably change them, right? Okay. Just so you know it's got fresh plugs in it. I don't know how old they are. We'd have to do some work digging around in here to actually get to these things. I got to pull the throttle body off of here. So I don't want to do that today.
No,
but
sure.
Something.
No, I'm saying like a different day I can bring them back and like.
Yeah, just go through whatever. We'll make a list, right? I mean, that was kind of the process. So. And then I'm just looking around. The valve cover is this piece here, right? So there's usually a gasket between the valve. There's always a gasket between the valve cover and the cylinder head. So I just like to look at those things, see if there's any oil leaking from up top. I don't really see anything. Everything looks pretty dry. And we'll do the same thing from underneath and see if there's anything wet anywhere. Okay.
And then is this underneath? Is that what the turbo is?
Well, the turbo is going to be on the exhaust side over here, so I don't know how much you're going to be able to see, but I'll show you what we've got. Let me get this out over here. So right in here, the turbo is underneath this cover, and it's actually, this is the wastegate for it right here, this little diaphragm, and then the turbo sits right in here. All right, so it's really hard to see. Everything is covered up. It comes right off the exhaust manifold. Okay, so underneath this cover,
Gotcha.
This aluminum cover, is really where the turbo sits. I'm trying to see if I can get you a good view of what it looks like, and you really can't. It's kind of buried in here. Maybe when we get underneath, you'll get a better look at it, okay?
And then can you see a blow-off valve from anywhere?
I don't see a blow-off valve anywhere. Nothing aftermarket. unless it's underneath or somewhere around the intercooler.
Does this one have to have some type of diverter or something then?
It does. It has a wastegate on it, so that's what that piece is right there. See that diaphragm?
Gotcha, okay.
And then it's got the rod. You see the rod coming out of the back of it?
Yeah.
Heading towards the back of the car? So that rod is what opens up the wastegate. This diaphragm will actually pull on that rod and relieve some of the boost on it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So that's what keeps it from doing the flutter.
That keeps it from over boosting, yeah. And those are set from the factory usually. I mean, they don't want too much boost on the car. So you got to realize with a turbocharger, that's why people love them, because they override what the manufacturer says is safe for their engine, right?
Okay.
So if the average car wants 12 or 15 pounds of boost, and that's where they want to cap it at, then they'll design this wastegate on here to open when the boost gets high enough, right? And they'll say no more after that. Like, let's dump that out. Let's not give the driver any more boost. And then what you say is, I want to get an aftermarket blow-off valve, and we'll disconnect that thing, and then we want to run the boost up to 30 psi, right? And that's when you start to have problems, right? Because your engine wasn't designed necessarily to handle that on a regular basis, right? But that's how you squeeze more power out of it, right? Like you were talking about the Porsche, right? So you know the difference between like the engine on a Carrera S, and a GTS, right? They're all the same engine, same turbos, same everything. The only difference is every model, they give it a little more boost, right? From the factory. They just say, okay, have a little extra, have a little extra. Yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, let's take a peek starting in the back here. So we've got oil dripping off the bottom here, and then all the way up. And then the same thing on the other side, over here. And all the way up.
So what's leaking?
That's probably your air conditioning. Yeah, see right here? So this is your evaporator drain. You see the water in it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes inside the dashboard. The way your air conditioning works, it has a piece inside the dashboard called an evaporator. The evaporator is what gets cold, and then we blow air across it to get cold air, right?
Gotcha.
But the same thing as if you, because we're a little bit humid today, same as if you leave a glass of ice water out and it gets condensation around the outside, we get the same thing happens on an evaporator on humid days, okay? So here's a weird thing that happens in Las Vegas. Because our humidity is so low, most of the year you don't even see water coming out of the evaporator drain. It's just not enough moisture in the air, right? And then the first humid day we get during summertime, as soon as it gets around, you know, the end of July or whatever, we get into the monsoon season, and then customers start coming in like crazy saying, my car is leaking everywhere, right?
Gotcha.
And a lot of times we just happen to see water coming out of the evaporator drain that they didn't notice the rest of the year, right? So today you'll see it. So here's your turbo. Take a look at this. Here's a better view of it, okay? You see this right here?
Mm-hmm.
That is the turbo.
Gotcha.
Okay, there's an oil drain on the turbo that goes back into the oil pan.
So the thing with the green
There's
bolt,
an oil feed line.
the piece with the green bolt.
This right here. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is the turbo. So there's two parts to it here. There's a blade back here where the exhaust flows past it and spins it, and then there's another blade in here which is on the intake side. That's what does the compressing. Compresses the air and packs it into the cylinder. That's how we get some more power, right? A little bit more oxygen in the cylinder, a little more fuel, and then we get to make some more power. So that's what your turbo looks like. It looks pretty factory to me. And you said 110,000 miles on this?
No, 77,000.
Oh, 77,000.
Under 100,000.
Oh, okay. Man, that's better. I thought I heard you say 100 something. All right.
Normal.
No, you got a little bit of leak there. So these are probably liquid-filled bushings on here. So these are called strut rods. And these bushings inside, sometimes they put a lot of liquid in there, like an oil-filled jelly almost. And when the bushings tear, they just ooze the oil out of them. Okay, so you got them leaking on both sides. Now you do have a bit of a leak right in here somewhere. And it looks like it could be from the power steering or a little bit higher up. Hard to tell from here. I don't think it's the power steering. It looks like it's oil maybe coming from behind the timing cover. You see how it kind of works its way all the way up here, and then once we get all the way up to that bracket, up here you can see more oil.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
And then all the way up on this cover, there's a plastic cover up above this belt. All the way up here, you can see that cover is wet too.
Okay.
So the only thing underneath there are oil seals for the camshafts. So here's another, yeah. So here's another thing. If you wanted to fix the oil leak, we'd have to pull the covers off, inspect, and see what's leaking back there. Chances are it's a front camshaft seal, would be my guess. Could be coming from the valve, front of the valve cover, underneath the timing cover. Could be coming through the variable valve timing sprocket on there or something, but we'd have to get it apart and see what's leaking in there. But chances are it's going to be front seals on there. So here's another thing, like a timing belt would be something you would consider at a certain mileage. And we don't know when the last time there was one done on this, right? So the question is it worth doing or not? If we have to get in there to fix an oil leak, yeah, you're going to do it either way. If you're saying, no, I'm not ready to do the timing belt yet, we'll just leave it alone, then I'd say leave the oil leak alone too, right? Just kind of drive it that way if you're not going to drive it much. All right, so your option how you want to do that. But just keep in mind, if the timing belt breaks, the engine doesn't run. All right, so it's another one of those things. Well, I don't know. Just bought the car. It's 25 years old, right? When was it? If it was done 5,000 miles ago, great. If it wasn't, who knows, right?
Yeah,
and then
it was done 5,000.
Yeah, you're just kind of wondering when is it due, right? When is it due, and how long is it going to last? All right, we can check the transmission oil and the rear differential. Let's do that. I think so far everything's looking pretty good. Yep, little insulation, but it's just got some rust, right? So rust through the heat shield, and then the insulation that sits in there is what's starting to poke through. So there's your transmission oil, looks clean. Okay. So I am noticing, remember we had some low power steering fluid, and I'm noticing a little bit of wetness on the steering rack. I'm going to show you here before we go to the back. Right in here. So this component from here across is the steering gear or the steering rack and pinion. Okay, and then you can see if I hold it back, the light back here a little bit, you see how it has this line that goes across here and it's wet?
Spots, yeah.
Yeah, it's wet on the bottom. And the same thing on this one. So generally what we can do, I don't want to pull it apart right now, but even if I was just to take a little pick and poke a hole in the bottom of this bellows boot, it's just a dust cover, probably some power steering fluid is going to come out.
Gotcha.
So what's happening is it's leaking. There are seals in the either end of the steering rack. Those are probably leaking. They're leaking into the dust boot, but the dust boot is sturdy, so it's capturing it. So it's not leaking on the ground, but it's starting to leave that stain from the inside out,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
So at some point, a steering rack's going to be in order, okay? Again, this is not stuff that you necessarily need to do now. You can drive it the way it is. It's not dripping on the ground. You'll just need to keep an eye on the power steering fluid, right? Make sure it doesn't run low at some point. And if it does start to leak worse, then I guess you address it, right? This is your clutch hydraulics. We've got a slave cylinder here with a brake hose to it. Remember we talked about the fluid that was up in the master cylinder for the clutch? The one that looked better, wasn't green? Well, that's the fluid that feeds this slave cylinder.
Okay.
There's a master cylinder and a slave cylinder. The master cylinder is the one that's pushing the fluid down into here, and then this thing pushes on this fork in here in order to move the clutch disc.
Gotcha.
Okay. You do have a catalytic converter, so it's got some emissions compliance in there. I guess that's good. Fortunately, I've never had a car fall off the lift. Knock on wood, right here. And then, oh, all right. So there's your differential oil. It looks pretty good. That's probably just a tad over full. Normally you pull that out. You want like the transmission. When I pulled that plug out, it didn't come pouring out. It should be right at the bottom of the check plug on there, or the fill plug. And this one's probably got a little extra.
Black one, right?
What's that?
The black cap.
No, I was talking about the transmission one when I pulled that plug out of the side.
Yeah, the black cap with the like tiny dipstick.
No,
Oh.
that was power steering.
Oh, gotcha.
Right here, I pulled that plug out, and you notice we didn't
okay.
get any oil on the floor,
Gotcha.
right? It should be right, the level should be floating along right at the bottom here, right? Like if I drew a line right there,
Gotcha.
that's about how you want the level sitting in here. So this bottom half of the transmission internally is soaked in fluid,
Okay.
but not the whole thing, right? And that same thing with this, that level should be sitting right along the bottom of this cover, right? So we got a lot of fluid out of there. Part of it could be because it's warmed up, and then the other part could just be it's a little bit overfilled.
And this is what again?
That's the rear differential. When people talk about re-gearing their car, that's what they're talking about, changing the gear set. And there's a ring and a pinion. So inside, behind this drive shaft right here, that's going to spin the pinion gear. The pinion comes in here and turns corners 90 degrees, right? So it's got a big ring gear that it engages with. And that's what drives the rear wheels, right? So when we talk about a ring and pinion, people change gear sets, they're usually changing those. Try to get the different gear ratio. You hear everybody talk about, the old guys, oh, I got 311 gears or 388 gears or whatever they're talking about. That's, they're talking about that gear ratio between those two gears.
Makes sense.
All right, so another thing we can look at over here, Roger, are what else connects in the drive line. The drive line is, or the drive train, is everything from the engine back, right? After the engine, we got to go through a transmission. There's a bunch of gears in there,
Okay.
right? And then we connect to a drive shaft, which is this long propeller shaft. This propeller shaft has a thing on it called a hanger bearing or a carrier bearing or a center support bearing. Okay, they've got different names for it depending on the manufacturer or the slang used in the shop, okay? Most technicians will call this a hanger bearing. It's really a center support bearing or a carrier bearing is what they call it. There's like a bushing in there with a bearing to support this two-piece drive shaft. There's a piece here in the front and then a piece in the back which connects to the differential. In the differential, we've got a couple of CV shafts, constant velocity shafts. These are half shafts or axles that connect to the wheels because we have independent suspension in the back. If we had a solid rear axle, like on the old cars when you were in high school maybe, or maybe a little before then, I don't know. But we would have a solid rear end with no half shafts in it. Okay, we didn't have independent suspension back in the day, but now we do on most cars. So then it's why we need these shafts to be able to move up and down with the wheels, right? Because this is fixed. This doesn't move, but the wheels go up and down. So in order to get that thing to change with the wheels height, we have to have some flex in there. So there's some joints behind these boots. When people say they have bad axle boots, these will be what they're talking about, these rubber boots, okay? So they look good. They're old, they're a little crusty, but they're not ripped and they're not leaking. Okay, so that's a good sign. You also have an interesting feature on here. This thing's got electric rear steering. Did you know that?
No.
Okay, so years ago I had an old Infiniti G37 and it had rear steering in it. What they do is they give you steerings when you at high speed. If you go a little to the right to change lanes, both the rear tires go a little bit to the right, and it's very little, like maybe a half a degree or a degree. It's very slight, okay? But you have that feature in this car, which is kind of cool. So it's supposed to improve handling, high speed, and cornering low speed. Going into a parking lot, it gives you a little bit of turn in the opposite direction. If you're turning left, these wheels are turning right? And it helps change your turning radius, make it tighter, okay? So on the freeway, it does the opposite. High speed helps you shift over by doing this. The wheels in the back and the wheels in front are going like this, right? And I'm exaggerating it, but that's how it goes, right? And then when you turn in a parking lot, they're doing this, right? But you have an electric motor here and another steering rack, like I showed you in the front with the boots that were leaking. Now, good thing this one has no fluid in it, at least nothing that's connected to a power steering pump. It's all electric, okay?
Gotcha.
But it's got little itty bitty tie rod ends that connect to the linkage on here, and that's what allows this thing to move. All right, so kind of a neat feature for this car. I didn't even realize they had this on here. I was looking around here at the body and stuff. Everything seems to be intact. I don't see a bunch of rust or anything. All these panels feel pretty solid. I mean, you can look as well. Dirty, dusty, yes. Intact, yes. So I don't see any real problems with any of this stuff. Now, one thing you may get an issue with at some point. You see how this exhaust is rubbing right here? You can see right here where like some rust developing, right?
Yeah.
So this exhaust is supposed to hang a little bit lower probably. You see the hangers are kind of uptight. You may hear some noise back here at some point. I didn't hear it when I drove it, but just letting you know, it shouldn't be touching the differential, right? Or there's just no gap for it. This pipe's this fat, and then probably the one that was in the car originally was like that, right?
Gotcha.
So it's just taking up some extra space.
With it when I got it. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, it looks good, sounds great. And I wouldn't be too worried about it, just letting you know it is rubbing there, you know.
Gotcha.
With a lot of miles, it probably, you know, at some point it could rub a hole in it, right? A lot of miles. I don't think you're gonna get there. Tires look great. These are brand new you just put on here, right? Yeah. And then I took a peek at the brakes. You have some brake life left, but I would tell you, because of the vibration you have and because I feel it in the brake shifter,
Replace them all.
yeah, I would do 4 rotors, maybe get some new pads, okay? This way the brakes are done. We'll bleed and flush the fluid all the way around, and then you're all set to go with the brakes.
We need new calipers too.
I don't know if you need that. You know,
More the aesthetic
they look
side.
okay. I don't see a lot of rust on them and stuff. We can compress the pistons.
I mean, more on the aesthetic side.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something you like. You know, they may also make caliper covers. Have you seen those?
I want them to be red. That's all.
Yeah, you could paint them too, you know. They make a...
I might spray paint the Nissan white. Let it
You just
dry.
got to get a high heat. You got to get high heat paint because they're going to generate some heat, right? Unless you don't plan to drive it hard ever. Well, I doubt it.
Yeah, I'll get the height.
Yeah. All right. I'm looking at the rubber components on here. There's a rear sway bar on here. This sway bar helps the handling, and there's some links. Usually the bushings go bad, but they look good on here. Okay, same thing here. And then you have sway bar bushings here. These are also rubber. They support this so that it can move and flex without rubbing metal to metal, okay?
Gotcha.
But they look fine here. You also have another one in the front. So this is your front sway bar right here. This piece that goes all the way across, it has sway bar bushings right here. Okay, and then we also have some links over here. You see these? Now these don't have any bushings in them. They have little joints on them. Okay, but everything looks fine and intact, so nothing to worry about there. There are a lot of bushings in the suspension all the way around. In here, this lower control arm has a bushing in here. They're really hard to see. Normally you would get some noise out of them if they were bad. Not always. And you can't really see them easily in here. But they look intact. There's nothing squeezing out or pushing out. Same thing on this side. Looks fine. And you also have upper control arms. So these are lower control arms. They connect the steering knuckle to the subframe here, and then we have uppers up here. You can see this one? Mm-hmm. There's also bushings on both ends of this, so it looks like a wishbone.
Gotcha. So where the upper control arms connect somewhere in there, that's where everybody talks about the rust.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll take a look. Maybe we'll let it down halfway so we can get a look inside the wheel well there and see if we can see anything going on, okay? I don't really see a lot of rust on this car. It's very minimal.
Yeah, this is the best out of the ones that I
this is
at. That's all.
I like to look at the brake hoses as well, these rubber hoses. Just make sure they're not split. A lot of times they'll crack up where the crimp is on the fitting, but these look fine, especially considering the age. And the only oil leak I saw was that one up front. You can see a little bit more of it back here, actually. If you look in through this way towards the front of the engine, you see how it's wet all the way up there?
On the black part?
If I point right through here, go looking past that turbo,
okay,
all the way up there. You see how it's wet up there? Can you see what I'm looking at? Here, I'm gonna do this for you.
Is it?
I got a little pointer. Let's do this. There. I'm gonna point to it, and then I'm gonna put the light back on so you can see. So,
is it a black piece I'm looking at?
hang on, I can't see. I'm looking without the light. I'm looking right about here. You see where that dot's at?
Yep.
Okay, that's where I'm looking. Now let me put the light back on. You see how it's kind of wet up there?
Yeah, the black piece is darker.
Yeah, it's darker, and then above that you can see like some dust and stuff stuck to the wet spots.
Okay.
Can you see what I'm talking about or no? Yeah, you might be better off look.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah? Okay, so that's that oil I was talking about before.
Uh-huh.
So we saw it from the front, and we're seeing some of it from the back side, right?
Which would make sense where the
Yeah, of course.
connecting.
Yeah. So it's in the same spot, but that's the only thing that's wet here. I'm looking around the oil pan or the rear main oil seal, which is that big seal that's on the back of the engine. It's completely dry.
So what's the timing belt job on this thing like?
As far as what, money?
Yeah.
Or
What's that like? Yeah.
I mean, it could be a $1,200 job somewhere in that ballpark,
Okay.
right? So usually when we do that, we'll change those front seals. There's one on the front of the crankshaft, which is this pulley here. And then there's camshaft seals as well. We would change both of those. Probably put some belts on at the same time. You got a little nick in it right there. Yep. Little piece broken off. And that's all this oil I'm seeing right in here and stuff coming off the bottom.
Yeah.
And the other thing we can do, I can try to tighten this belt up just a little bit, and you can tell me how it sounds in the morning tomorrow. All right, so we've completed this inspection for Roger. We've identified quite a few things on here that need some attention. That's to be expected of a car that's this old and a car that we've never seen before, obviously just arrived to the United States. So we're gonna go ahead and take care of some things here with Roger. We've come up with a list and a plan. We're gonna be taking care of the timing belt, the drive belts, fix the oil leak at the front of the engine. We've got some suspension bushings that need to be replaced because they're leaking. We've got 4 coilover shocks we're going to be replacing on there. I think he wants to get rid of the leaking ones in the rear and go ahead and upgrade the front as a matching set, as well as we're going to take care of the brake vibrations that are in here, putting all new brake rotors, new brake pads on it. And then, it's got a bunch of other miscellaneous things we're going to take care of on here. So we're going to try to document some of this stuff for you. If you guys are interested in seeing this Nissan Skyline R34, we're going to try to go ahead and document a lot of these repairs and put them together in some cohesive videos so you can see the process of making these repairs on some of these things and maybe talk about some of the reasons for the repairs and how some of the components function on there. So if you're really enjoying this content, R34, check us out. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. You'll get notifications. We're releasing new videos every Thursday, and the ones we make on this will be part of those Thursday releases. So thanks for watching. We've got plenty of content for you coming up. Make sure you check out some of our other videos. We'll see you in the next one.